and we will start speaking in English. This microphone is yours.
Thank you.
En ik ga er zelf ook bij zitten. We hebben ongeveer 3 kwartier voor ons interview. En we zullen ook stukjes film laten zien, zodat u echt een beeld krijgt ook van hoe het is in de regio waar hij vandaan komt. Father Gideon, welcome. We've already been here 2 days and we traveled together. We saw a little bit of the Netherlands. Can you explain where you are from? Maybe I could ask to show the next slide. Please. Can I have the next slide, please? Next one, please. So this is quite an impressive picture for most of us. I think most people here are not familiar with weapons. And in a way, for a priest, it is strange that you are. But can you explain up to the time that you were a priest, your childhood, where did you grow up?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Like he said, I am Father Gideon Obasuge from Nigeria. I am from the northern part of Nigeria, Maiduguri Diocese, that is ravished by Boko Haram. Boko Haram is a terrorist organization that is out to declare the strictest form of Islam, to purify Islam. And that is me, Gideon. I am within some of my friends in a photo. These are youths who collaborate with the military to fight against Boko Haram. From the early part of 2009, Maiduguri in Nigeria became a boiling point for terrorism. And Christians in the northern part of Nigeria, since then, up until now, had not found it that easy living their faith, expressing their faith. It's been difficult. So I grew up in Maiduguri. I was born in Maiduguri. And Maiduguri happens to be the birthplace of Boko Haram. It is the birthplace of Boko Haram because Mohammed Yusuf, the founder of Boko Haram, started his movement within Maiduguri. So we grew up with some of these young boys who later on became radicalized and they took to arms, became terrorists. Some of them are my friends, some are my schoolmates, but today I don't know where some of them are because they are on the run.
When you were a child, so in primary school, did you already notice that this was going on, or was it really later when you grew up, became an adolescent maybe, that this came into existence?
Yeah, actually in the north of Nigeria, before Boko Haram, that is pre-Boko Haram era, there had been some subtle tension between Christians and Muslims, particularly in a state like Kaduna, where you went to. There had been some tensions, between Christians and Muslims. But up until 2009, it became fully blown that we have serious terrorist group in Nigeria. So before Boko Haram came, we had no imagination that the terrorism will come out as hot as we have seen.
So what was it like in your own church? Were you ever attacked? Was there any violence towards church members?
Definitely. In Maiduguri, the Catholic Diocese in Nigeria, from 2009 up until 2015, we had over 350 churches burnt down and destroyed. And when I mean churches, I mean church centers and local church communities, because the terrorists were out to clear off anything that has to do with the sign of the cross, because it was to purify the land, and that the only religion that should be practiced on the land is to be Islam. My parish church, where I grew up, where I was baptized, was bombed twice by Boko Haram, because my parish community, it's very close to the mosque where the founder of Boko Haram started his movement. So it was a first target. My parents, my mother, my father, my siblings were very, very lucky because probably God was on their side. They would have been killed. Because when the church was attacked for the first time, they were in the church for some pastoral meeting, but they had to flee the church and run back home amidst gunshots, terrible sounds of bullets, and they survived it. And they have now left the north of Nigeria. They now live in the south of Nigeria.
Now here you are as a priest, you can see clearly, as a target in a way as well, like many priests are, I think, in your region. How is it that despite the fear of violence, that you and others are still becoming priests, are following your vocation?
Yeah, like I did say yesterday when I had an interview with the Catholic newspaper, I said for us, we have a peculiar story to tell the world, particularly as Catholics. The persecution we have been seeing in Nigeria has in a way strengthened our faith. For us, our faith has been purified. The churches are packed filled with people. The persecution, for me, has not sent our people out of the church. It has rather brought them back. So I think those who feel or felt they can bring down the sign of the cross and destroy our faith, I think they are fighting a worthless battle, because the church is rising strongly, because the church is not all about structures, it is all about quality of faith. As a priest today, humanly speaking, yes, I could be scared, I could be afraid of my life, and we discuss with my fellow colleagues. Way back when we were in the seminary, we had an idea of the kind of priesthood we would like to live, where you meet your fellow brother priests, you can drive quietly without fear. But now we don't have that. There is always curfew. You don't move out after 6 p.m. in some communities. In some parishes, way back in 2014, there was curfew. People are always asked to stay at home, so the priest remains alone in the parish. But despite all this, in my diocese today we have 55 seminarians. That means the vocation is still growing, and the priests are still happy doing their work.
So you said you had a curfew. We have a bit of experience now with the lockdown, I think, in the Netherlands because of COVID.
Yeah.
But we don't have any experience with violence. So I would suggest that we start the movie that is next. Just a small episode from a movie from Aid to the Church in Need about Nigeria. And after this weekend, we will send you a link as well so you can watch the full documentary. But it will give you an impression of what it is like an attack by Boko Haram. Can you imagine? So if you could please start the movie.
Na aure ina na mata da yara hudu, ina da kuma jika, kuma muna aiki a gona tare da yarina. Shekara ta 2017, rai 17 na wata na 7 suna ta fara kawo mana hari a wannan kawai. Suna ta kawo mana hari ne, ana zaune karfe 6 na safe, sai na fara jin harbe a wani. Da mun ji harbe a wani birnin jina, sai duka ihu na kama gari. Sai kamar wani gari wani ana zuci an kwantar da. Dalilin da yake ba mu wahala saboda yanayin hanyar babu kyau, kuma ba mu da network inda ko za a kira wani ko domin samun taimako. wanda ke ban wahala kenan. Waɗannan muka yi dai ƙungiya na sintiri domin tsaro, amma ko da gida ka sai su dinga zagaya suna tsare mutane a cikin gidaje. Lokacin da sun zo wannan attack na 2019 a watan 8 ga watan 12 sun zo sun kusa da Libya.
Gaskiya kamar wani nansa ba zan iya sai dai mu dai muna zaune sai muka bi around 5 sai mu bi zama mutane suna zuwa kamar da mutane su bani ko su wani ne suna zuwa sai suna fahar da riko a Maiduguri kuma jama'a kuma muna kan gudu ban waya musamman su wani.
Sun zo daga can nan ta yamma sun zo kawai sun kewaye gari, akwai wanda suke kone gidaje, akwai wanda kuma suna je suna ta harbe amma kawai sai mun gudun mashi da daji ba abin da muku doka komai don kowa ya fita har gida. Gani mu mun ta jin harbe
waɗanda aka kashe su ba su da rai sun kai kamar 30.
Fargaba zan ce rashin fargaba na kan mana da ba su ko ka kwanta in ka ji kara sai ka doka cewa kila masu attack din.
So it's very recent, the attack that they are talking about, 2019. 500 people coming into the village. How often do we hear stories like this in the Diocese of Maiduguri? What is the extent of these attacks, the presence of Boko Haram?
Yeah, like we have watched and heard from the video, these attacks are ongoing and they were really, really rampant in 2014 up until 2017. And then 2019, we still have some pockets of attacks. But for now, the attacks have been reduced because the terrorists have been pushed out of the communities. They now stay in the bushes, in the deserts, and once in a while, they come into the cities for some guerrilla attacks. Just this morning, I got a tweet from a security expert on Twitter who sent me a tweet that 2 communities in Kaduna State have been conquered by Boko Haram. A faction of Boko Haram they call Ansur. So we can't predict when these people are coming to attack. But from what we can see, the levels of attacks now cannot be compared to the attacks we had in 2014, 2015, and 2016. They kidnap, they cause fear, like the guy was saying. When you hear a loud sound, you are traumatized. There's a trigger because people have harbored a lot of pains in their body, a lot of fear, anxiety, and people are traumatized. We talk about widows who have not seen their husbands, who have lost their husbands, have lost their children. So these attacks have been reduced because these terrorists have been pushed out of the community, but there is still fear. People can't go back to their communities. People live in displaced people's camp, that is as refugees in their own country.
We talked about this before. There is de-radicalization, and there are programs for de-radicalization, and there are the refugees. Can you explain how many refugees there still are, and a bit about the de-radicalization program that the government has started?
Yeah, this is something very current in the Nigerian state today. They have a process, the Nigerian government has a process they call a de-radicalization program for IDPs, for Boko Haram terrorists. Because for now we see terrorists coming out to lay down their arms. And we don't know if this is a strategy. Because they come out and say, oh, I am a terrorist, I'm a Boko Haram member, but from today I stop fighting. And there is a window from the military to accept these people, de-radicalize them, and for them, they feel they will be reinstated into the communities. But Nigerians have problems with that. We have no problems accepting former terrorists. We have no problems de-radicalizing them. They will have problems reinstating them into the communities because of obvious reasons. Those who were displaced, those who became refugees, are still out of their communities. They are staying in camps, and they are not well taken care of. And then here you are, a former terrorist. He is given allowance every week. He is protected by the military. And then he becomes like a big man, whereas the victims of his attacks previously are still suffering. Women can't find their husbands, and the government has not really come to their aid. My bishop in the Catholic Diocese of Maiduguri has over 5,000 widows that he looks after. He has a camp for Catholics where you have displaced Catholics, refugees Catholics who are staying with the bishop in an uncompleted secretariat. And critically enough, that's Church in Me, had assisted my bishop greatly in giving life back to these people. So we have a problem with the de-radicalization process because we feel as Nigerians, those who are displaced, those who are still refugees, should be given the surety and the hope to get back to their hometowns and be in peace. When they are reinstated and they are in peace, we can now talk about helping former terrorists. That is the issue we are facing.
So we talked about Boko Haram. There's also another issue, a violent issue as well. And I would like to ask for the next movie to be started, to see a little bit about the Fulani shepherds. So could you please start the next movie?
Ina da dabbobi wanda suka yi kimanin sanuwa 30, ina da awaki guda 27. Ni lokacin da nake yaro ba na rere ba a da bafulata domin duka harkokin yana cikin gidajensu ba mu san cewa ma akwai rigima ba yanzu ba. Kowa wanda ka gani dan uwanka ne. Duka bai shekara 15 ko zuwa 20 da farawa wannan rikice-rikicen nan tsakanin da su ma duka bai fi shekara 10 ba. Wannan lokaci an fito da sace-sace wanda mu anan ba mu so cewa kwata-kwata sai yanzu a kore ma bafulata ne shanu gaba daya wanda shi kuma bafulata ne dukiyarsa ya gada ne kakanni da iyaye. Shi ne sai suka dawo suna satin jama'a da wannan bafulatanin da ke wannan wuri ta suka kamar mun haɗa baki da su an zuwa na fita da ta su farmashi to an farmashi sai a je a kashe wanda za a kashe kuma wannan mutane dama ba 'yan ƙasa ba ne kuma su fito da wani ba wasu da kowa domin kuma wannan mutane ba su gane cewa a mu ba masu wannan abu aka dawo ana kashe juna bayan su kashe juna su kuma fulani sai su dawo su ma daga baya sai a zo a yi masu ata sanadin da rigiman tsakanin da su abin da ya sa aka yi ta wannan rikishi ke shi ne sanadin wannan kinafin dalilin da ya sa aka yi ta wannan rigima a wannan karamar hukumar kaji.
Saw a short interview, of course, with a shepherd, a Fulani shepherd. Since centuries, there were problems between the Fulani shepherds, of course, traveling with their flocks, and the local Christians. The Fulani were mostly Muslims. The local Christians who owned lands, cultivated their lands. It's a logical conflict, you would say, in a way. Is it in any way related to Boko Haram? Or would you say these are two completely different issues that we face?
Yeah, from my experience in Nigeria, and like you said, there has always been this conflict between the pastoralists and then the farmers. But from what we see in Nigeria, the question we are asking in Nigeria, at what point do pastoralists started taking up arms? AK-47 rifle, they don't need that to protect their animals. So there are elements of infiltration of the Boko Haram terrorism into these groups. Because when the Fulani headsmen, the pastoralists, attack any community, they go straight for the church. And that is where we underscore our point. What has the church got to do with the Fulani heads? So there is this deliberate attempt to frustrate the efforts of the church to bring down any sign of the cross. And Nigeria as a nation, for a long time, they have always tried to make it an Islamic nation. So these are all pointers, and these are figures and experiences we get from visual estimations. There are no books or articles or research works by some professors. But these are what we see every day, subtle attacks from our relationship with our brothers, the Muslims. And we are not saying every Muslim is bad, but from what we are seeing in Nigeria today, there is a metamorphosis of the Boko Haram from just being a terrorist group that is hiding away. They have infiltrated into the Fulani headsmen, and for that we see attacks. Like I did say before now, a community in Kaduna is very far away from the Sambisa forest, where we have Boko Haram terrorists. But a community in Kaduna has been conquered just this week by a faction of Boko Haram, because they have penetrated that community through the Fulani headsmen.
So we can see agenda in a way. I think before you mentioned once also that politicians are involved, having an agenda as well to support this idea of an Islamic nation. Corruption is a very big problem. So you also mentioned before that there are moderate Muslims fighting against Boko Haram. But there is this level of mistrust towards the government. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, because Nigeria is a very large and big country with over 200 million people. And the government for quite some time had always been, I would use the word selfish, and it's as if there is no that inner push, because Boko Haram terrorism should not be what would have lasted for all these years without being stopped. And like I told the lady yesterday who interviewed me for the Catholic newspaper, I told her I am also here to use this medium to call upon the government in Netherlands through her embassy in Nigeria. We could also speak to the government of Buhari, the president of Nigeria, because to get a solution to Boko Haram terrorism in Nigeria, many people have spoken before, and we need to get their voices. And you talked about politicians. There are so many politicians who, from their comments, from their speeches, if investigated, we could have some real facts that these people could be financing Boko Haram. Financing Boko Haram, like I said, to create that purest form of Islam. So if this is done, we could get to the root of the matter and the solution can come. So politicians and some Muslim imams who are moving freely in Nigeria because they have security covers, for me, I would say some of them are really, really supporters of Boko Haram terrorism. Yeah. You know, you could say, why do the Boko Haram members also kill Muslims or whatever? Yes, any Muslim that comes against them is taken off. It's an agenda, it's a planned program, it's a process of purifying the land. That is what we see from, like I said, visual estimates, from the sufferings of our people, from the killings, you see, even from the kidnappings. From 2015 up until today, we have records of over 80 Catholic priests and religious that have been kidnapped. Some have been kidnapped and killed, some kidnapped, later on they have been released. And the question we've been asking, I spoke with you yesterday, how many imams have been kidnapped in Nigeria? How many imams have been kidnapped? We beg to ask this question. Are you saying that, okay, if it's for monetary reasons, are you saying that the Catholic priest is rich? There are richer imams in Nigeria. There are richer politicians in Nigeria. They don't kidnap them. Why go for the Catholic priest? Why go for the pastor?
Now we talked a lot about problems, and the Christians in Nigeria, in Maiduguri especially, face a lot of problems. I think the next question is how to deal with them, how to get out of this problem. And I'd like to ask for the next movement to be started, because it is one answer maybe, and I would like you to reflect on that.
Ni a fahimta da kuma yadda muke duk wani mutumin da kashe ne ko kai ka fi su yana da kusurin saboda tunanin shi bayan tunanin kuma dole ne mu zama da shi ba yadda za mu ba kuma masu hannu na farko kaga wannan kasuwa da hannu tana da muhimmanci domin za a samu mu'amala mai kyau kamar yadda na cika kasuwar nan da haushe da fulatani da kadara ana can da wannan ya ƙafa da sallah haushe ya zo ya farin ciki kadara ma ya zo ya farin ciki fulatani ya zo ya farin ciki da wannan ma kisina za a sha kula ai wannan abubuwa domin mu ƙara danƙon zumunci to da abin da aka sani to wannan abu aka rasa shi a cikin wannan shekara kaga abu ne wanda ke yana raba zumunci.
We talked about the fear that people have before, and how it expresses itself with just the smallest sound, and people would, feel scared. You can imagine that people are also scared to deal with other Muslims, that they become fearful of the other. Can you say from a pastoral perspective, how does the church try to deal with that? How to keep the relations warm with the other, so to speak?
That's a very wonderful question, very existential. Because like the guy said, we must live together. And we don't want a Nigeria where we have Muslims in the north and then Christians in the south. Because in the north we have families, Muslim families, that have Christian members of such families. So as a church in the Catholic Diocese of Maiduguri, the efforts of the bishop is we are seeing how can we strengthen the dialogue we have with the Muslim community. That is why the bishop every year organizes a forum not only with Catholics, not only with non-Catholics, but also with non-Christians. We get Muslim youths and their imams, and the bishop addresses them, and we get Catholic youths to mingle with Muslim youths. Because for now, in Nigeria, most children, they have, like you said, fear for the other. And like I told you, when I get back home, I will want to go for a project. I will take a record of all the Catholic schools in Maiduguri, and I will ask all the children that are less than from 10 years down to 5 years or 4 years, what is their conception of Islam in Maiduguri. And I bet you a good number of them, because of Boko Haram terrorism, will tell you all Muslims are bad. They will tell you Islam is a terrible religion. But the church is really on her toes to see that we break that imagination, because we must live in peace even with the Muslim. We must dialogue with them. We must pray for them. The bishop, courtesy of Cricket North, has sent relief materials also to Muslims in camps. Because Muslims who were scared in their own communities also fled and came to the city of Maiduguri, in the capital of the state, and they have their camps. The bishop, we assisted the bishop, he took relief materials, food, drinks, to them, because they are also human beings. Christ, our Lord, would have done the same. So steps like that are moves towards creating a level of collaboration, of dialogue. That despite the fact that I am a Christian, I am a Catholic priest, you are a Muslim, we must not fight. You can practice your faith, I can practice my faith, we all need peace. Because if there's no peace, I can't go to church, and you can't go to mosque. So there's always this move to see that we live in peace. We live in peace, because without peace, there is no way forward.
Another aspect, and I believe it's quite difficult to ask of people as well, is something that we would like to show first in the next movie. It's about forgiveness.
Gaskiya ba na kiyayya da su, domin a da zan iya yin kiyayya da su, amma inda na ce maka turu charismatic, na san ga kalmar Ubangijin Allah ya nuna mana da cewa idan mutum ya mare ka don hannun dama ka juya ta hagu ya mare ka. Na riga na yafe musu, domin kalmar sai nuna mana ya can baka yafe ba, shi ma ba zai yafe maka ba. Na yafe musu.
Can you imagine to forgive, like in her case, the murderer of your husband? it's something that goes very deep, of course. Can you explain, you've met more people like her, I know Rebecca Dietrich, for example. Can you explain a bit of the process that they go through and the difficulties in the emotional process?
Yeah, this is something very, very human. To forgive is divine, they say. Sometimes it's not easy when you have your husband being killed and probably you still see the terrorists around and the church asks you to forgive. It's very difficult at human level. But as a church in Maiduguri, we always preach forgiveness. Because without that desire to forgive, that courage to forgive, you can't even move forward. Today our people are traumatized. This woman has her husband killed by Boko Haram. And in my diocese, like I said, we have over 5,000 widows whose husbands were killed by Boko Haram. And those who had their husbands killed and they saw the corpses are even happy because there is some psychological closure. But I bet you there are a good number of women who up until today cannot tell you where their husbands are. Because when the terrorists came, everybody fled. And you reached a particular city, you ask for your husband, he's nowhere to be found. And for the past, from 2014 up until now, about 7 years, no news. So you are wondering, is he dead? Is he alive? No news. And Nigeria is so big that you have villages, you have bushes, you have rocks, mountains, that ordinarily you could ask me, why would he call? No telephone. There are places where there are no network service. Because the land is so vast. So people like that, the bishop has formed a group for them, like the Widows Group, to preach forgiveness, to preach peace. And the bishop has formed, he has raised one of the highest crosses in Nigeria at the top of the mountain, where people go to pray, to seek forgiveness for their sins, and ask God to give them the grace to forgive their enemies. It's like a spiritual formation or reformation for our people. I spoke with someone yesterday. I said, what would you, a priest or a bishop, do if a young girl comes to you and tells you, oh Father, at confession, I was kidnapped by Boko Haram, I was raped by Boko Haram, I was forced to pray the Muslim form of prayer, I became a Muslim for 3 years in the camp with Boko Haram, but now I am out, I want to begin receiving communion. You cannot just absorb her and tell her, go say 3 Hail Mary and come back and receive communion. No. She could tell you, I've forgiven them. But deep within her, is there trauma? Is there still hatred? And that is why today the bishop, through the assistance of Christian North, Aid to the Church in Need, is on this project of constructing a psychosocial service center and a skill acquisition center. And Church in Need, through her benefactors and benefactresses, have done a good job with my bishop to see that these women who have been traumatized, they come to meet the priest prays for them, tells them the importance of forgiveness, and then they go meet a psychotherapist who counsels them. And through the assistance of Christian North, the bishop has trained priests who are clinical psychologists, because the diocese cannot employ the services of a psychologist outside. So we have a priest who is a clinical psychologist, and another one has studied psychospirituality. And their work is to accompany our people. We will talk to these women, tell them the need of forgiveness, because we have a fear. If they become radicalized themselves, then tomorrow they too can go out and attack. And that will be a very serious back and forth. So that's the stage we are in the diocese now, telling our people the need for forgiveness. It's very difficult at human level. Because someone who killed your husband for no fault of his, some persons will say, I will not forgive him till I depart this life. And we tell our people, forgive and move on. Christ tells us that. But we have a psychologist who works with them for trauma healing. Because if we miss our people today, then the church is gone. So all the efforts of my bishop is geared towards keeping our people together, keeping them happy despite the situation of fear and trauma. So that is a project that is doing now. And the diocese encourages every priest, any person who comes to you with issues of terrorism, of attacks, my husband has been killed, my father has been killed by Boko Haram, you encourage them and you forward them to the Psychosocial Service Center so that they will work on their psyche, on their traumas, and try to heal them. I give you a story of a little boy who has his father killed by Boko Haram. His father always goes out for work, and when he comes back, he's a policeman. When he comes back, he always brings gifts for his baby, for his kid. On this good day, the father was caught up by Boko Haram in a bomb blast, and he died. And the guy was just 4 years. His father didn't come back home. He asked his mom, where is my father? So your father has been killed by Boko Haram. A 4-year-old boy cannot understand why wouldn't his father return from work. Then he told his mother, who had told him that your father was killed by Boko Haram. And the young boy told his mother, Mama, if I grow up, I will kill Boko Haram. So people like that will have them plenty in the diocese. And the diocese will have to work with them. Because the Christian message must be preached. Must be preached on good hearts. And he talked about Rebecca. Rebecca was a lady who was kidnapped by Boko Haram. And she was with them for 3 years. They made her pregnant, and she gave birth to a baby boy. And God protected her. She left the camp. She came back to meet her husband. And her husband was already preparing to take up a second wife, because for him, after 3 years, he thought his wife had been killed. But here she was, Rebecca, with a newborn baby, who was never his son. I personally took them from Maiduguri Diocese. They did genotype, and his genotype was not corresponding to theirs. So he was a son from the Boko Haram terrorists. Her story is something else. It's a very traumatizing story. But the bishop encouraged the husband to accept the little baby, because this little baby has no fault. And the woman said, no, I am not ready to accept this baby, because whenever I see him, it reminds me of the terrorists who raped me and made me pregnant. Thereupon, serious advice, encouragement, she said, I can feel my blood flowing in this baby, so I accept him as my baby. But the husband said, I can't stay in my house with a stranger. My bishop again spoke to the father and told him, keep this baby for me. He's my baby. Let him be with you. And later on, the father also accepted, because we told him that this baby, though a son of a Boko Haram, will become a sign of blessings to you. And I bet you today, through the assistance of aid to the church in need, he has left the camp with his wife. He has a house where he stays. He has a business. And the little boy is now up to 6 years. His name is Christopher. He has been baptized. He's going to school. So we hope that tomorrow he becomes a priest. Who knows? Even a bishop.
Something in line with what you said. I just came up with it now. It's not on my list of questions. You talk about the future and that we should prevent Christians from radicalizing as well, so meaning that they become violent. In fact, you are calling them to turn the other cheek, as Christ asked us to do. And I was thinking about this explanation about what does it mean to turn the other cheek. It means not to run. It means not to fight back, but it means to try to make the other, that's what Christ did, aware of what he is doing, that he is violent, that he should change. What do you think? Will that happen? Will the Christians in Maiduguri, with their testimony, with their presence, the fact that they are there and they are not retaliating, will they touch the Muslims in any way?
Definitely. Definitely. Already they have been touched. Because for the Boko Haram, what happened in 2009, they thought there would be no Christians again within the city of Maiduguri. But I bet you today you go to Maiduguri, as you enter the city of Maiduguri, you will see the pinnacle of the, I wouldn't call it cathedral, I would call it basilica, that has been built by the bishop, courtesy of faith to the church in need. They were in Nigeria, they saw the structure. It's a new church, a big church. And what are we doing? We are telling them we are here. We are not going anywhere. Because the church for us also reflects our faith. A big church, fine, modern church. And we are still there. We aren't going nowhere. And to help speak to them, not just our act of non-violence, but also the church is calling on all imams and even the government to speak to all imams, that the imams should speak to their people, that because they always tell us that Islam is peace. Islam is a peaceful religion. So the imams should talk to their people. You can't see a non-Muslim and you kill him, and then you come back and say Islam is for peace. It's illogical. So those who have been radicalized by the same creed and belief in Islam, we always encourage the imams, like I did tell you before. The bishop has a forum with imams and Muslim youth. He encourages the imams, during your preachings, tell your people the importance of peace in Islam. Because if you tell them that no, as a Muslim you must bring everybody to Islam by force and by law, then it's violent. That is hate speech. Everybody must practice his or her religion. Don't be violent. So I think that is a way the church and we Christians in Maiduguri are helping our Muslim brothers to recognize and accept the fact that they must encourage their people to become instruments of peace, even in their Islam or in their religion as Islam, as Muslims. That is a way. If not, we are going to be wasting our time and going back and forth. So non-violence is one. We are killing these people, but they are not running anywhere. They are rather growing and increasing the faith. And then secondly, we come to a round table and we speak to their leaders. Go and tell your Muslim youths that Islam is not a violent religion. So any person who tells you you are killing a Christian and you get to heaven and get 5 virgins, you tell him that is arrant nonsense. There is nowhere it's written in the Quran. You should love your neighbor and accept the other, even if he's not a Muslim.
So we have to almost finish the interview now. With the experience that you have being persecuted, what would you tell people in the Netherlands, Christians in the Netherlands, Catholics in the Netherlands? What would be your message to encourage us?
Number one is that we all know that persecutions have different phases. Mine might be a violent persecution. Mine might be a very physical persecution. The other person might not be facing any physical persecution. Here in the Netherlands and in Europe, there could be this widespread of secularism, where you don't make the sign of the cross in a restaurant, or you don't tell your brother that you have a belief in God. He tells you it's a cake. But I dare tell you, God is always new. God is an ancient God, but is always new. Man tells you, oh, religion, faith, having belief is something for our own parents. We, the young today, we don't believe. We're in a jet age with 5G network. Where is God? That is just to satisfy the curiosity of man, because man is naturally dissatisfied and he looks out for satisfaction outside God. But as St. Augustine will tell us, our hearts are restless until our hearts rest in God. So for me and all my priest friends in Nigeria and all my Christian friends in Nigeria, persecution has purified our faith. That's my message to you, Christians and Catholics in the Netherlands. Any subtle form of ridicule because you're a Christian or a Catholic should not discourage you, but should rather purify your faith. Because Christ has told us right before time, they will drag you before leaders, they will laugh at you, they will tell you you are old-fashioned, you are outdated. And I tell you, Jesus Christ can never be outdated, because he's always new. He is the consciousness we have in us. And that's my message for you. And secondly, to pray for our people. Know that you can come for Mass here. We had Mass this morning, it's as if we were in heaven. Quietly, no disturbance. Know that there are Christians out there, Catholics, who cannot have Mass in a quiet environment like this, without bomb blasts or attacks. The video we watched, a woman was in the church with her husband, and the church was attacked. My parish, as a parish priest, my parish was attacked. Thank God I was on break. They burned down everything and packed my belongings, even my castle, my alp. I don't know whether they will become priests. They packed everything. But I'm happy because I'm still alive. So in practicing your faith here in Europe, know that you have Catholic brothers and sisters out there who have it difficult expressing their faith or going to church, not because they don't want to go, but because of violence. So pray for them, pray for them, pray for them, pray for Nigeria, pray for my diocese, pray for priests. Because I just spoke with a friend of mine yesterday, a parish priest in a community they call Maiduguri, just 10 kilometers from Boko Haram camp. But he is there with his people. His parents have told him, go and tell the bishop to take you up to this parish. We don't want to lose you. But he told his mother that the day I was ordained, I went on the floor and the people of God chanted the litany of the saints. That was the day I gave my life to God. So whenever we have the people of God, I go work with them. So please pray for priests who are working in difficult places because of terrorism. And to encourage you also to assist and pray for the work of ACN Cricket North, because they are doing a wonderful work to keep us as priests where we are. They are doing wonderful work to help our bishop to provide relief materials, clothes, medications, school for children. And this is to keep the faith alive. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. Father, I will give the microphone to Peter. We would like to thank you for this interview.